So hello everyone and welcome to Quick Start Using the Write Button with me, Dahlia. I'm a fantasy and romance writer from Germany and I'm using Sudowrite now for a little over 2 years, and it really helped me in writing and planning and editing my books. And since last summer, I'm also teaching here at Sudowrite. Here with me today are my lovely co-hosts, Manar and Tomas, who will keep an eye for me on the chat and will also answer some questions. Quick start sessions like today's using the Write Button session are designed for those who are rather new to Sudowrite or are returning after a long break and want to get up to speed. Step by step, you learn the essential basics to start using Sudowrite's features effectively. In this session, I'll provide an overview of how to use the Write Button in Sudowrite. You'll learn how to use both auto-write and guided write to develop your story and overcome writer's block. And so that you can focus on listening rather than rushing to take notes, I prepared a class document with all the key information I'll be sharing today. I'll drop the link in the chat. I hope I'll find the chat. Nice, there it is. This class will be divided in 2 parts. We'll begin with a little bit of a lecture portion that hopefully will only be like 15 minutes, where we'll cover all the essentials of the write settings, auto write, guided write, and tone shift. And then we'll have a live walkthrough of my approach to the Write Button in action. And at the end of the session, we'll also have Q&A where you can ask any remaining questions. So let's start with why I decided to host this class. The Write Button is a very powerful tool that, at least in the past, often got overlooked in favor of the chapter generator that is now the draft feature. But since writers have different approaches to writing, using draft isn't the right fit for everyone. I'm personally a planner, which means that I like some planning, but I don't enjoy outlining every little detail. When I start writing a chapter, I may not even know how it will end. Because of that, the idea of generating a whole chapter or a whole scene in one go has always felt very restrictive to me. Thankfully, the Write Button is perfect for writers like me who prefer more flexibility in their workflows. Where draft is a dream tool for plotters, Write is ideal for pantsers. You can simply start writing and see where it takes you, even if you have no idea of where you're headed. Write doesn't need super detailed scene directions. Already with a vague idea, you can get quite far with it. And if you don't have any idea at all, you can just hand over the wheel to the AI and see where it takes you. But Write is not just for pantsers. Since it connects to the story Bible, it understands the story you're writing as well. And with guided write, you can steer it in the direction you want. This makes it useful for plotters as well, especially if you want to do most of the writing yourself. In that case, the Write Button acts as your junior writer, and it jumps in when you're stuck or need to fill in gaps that you don't feel like writing yourself. All in all, it's a versatile tool that adapts to different writing styles, and I'm very excited to show you how you can use it to get the most out of it. Essentially, Write works by reading the text before the cursor and continuing it logically while considering your prompt, instructions, or your story Bible. Write has a readback window of 1,000 words in general, but some models with large context windows like the Claude 3s, for example, which, for example, I used with the excellent prose mode, Write can read up to 20,000 words back. This helps maintain consistency and allows the AI to adapt to your writing style if you edit along the way. However, since credit costs depend on how much text the AI reads and writes, a long readback can also be expensive. In that case, it helps if you highlight the section of the text that you want to be considered as a context and therefore reduce the input size and save some credits. Write is also good with looking at the Story Bible information. When the Story Bible is activated, Write pulls in key context as, now where's it? The style, the genre, the linked chapter from the outline, if a chapter is linked, and characters and world building details. In this case, Write would look at any character whose name is partially mentioned in your text. This is very important to keep in mind. For example, if a character is named Guillermo de la Cruz, the system would also pull in details about his mother, Silvia de la Cruz, whenever it detects the la or cruz in the text. And of course, that would also apply to any character who has a de la or cruz in their name as well. In that case, it helps to hide the character to make sure that you only look at the character that you want to look at. And something also to keep in mind is that Write looks at all world building cards as context. This is different to how it works in Draft. In Draft, you only look at the world building that's explicitly mentioned. But for Write, the developers thought that it would give Write a bit more of an holistic understanding of your world building to just be more spontaneous and come up with different ideas. But that also means that unless you hide cards, it will read all 165 world building cards in your epic fantasy project every time you click Write, which on the one hand might overwhelm Write with too much context. On the other hand, it would also drive up credit costs unnecessarily. So in other words, to avoid spoilers or unnecessary details, make sure Write can only access information the POV character should know. Like with readback, hiding irrelevant cards or traits reduces the input, which helps to lower credit costs. So these are some basics to understand about Write. Are there any questions about this so far? Or are we good?
That is clear.
Awesome. Then we'll switch over to Sudowrite and take a look at the Write settings. Now, where are we? Since it also helps to understand the settings when you want to optimize how the AI generates the text for you. But first of all, you will find Write up here in this corner. And when you click on this little arrow, it opens up and you have here the choice between auto write, guided write, tone shift. And at the bottom, you have the Write settings. When you click into the Write settings, you first of all see the creativity slider. With this slider, you can adjust how closely the AI sticks to the source text versus how much creative freedom it takes. Or in other words, if you give it a prompt, this also determines how closely it will follow your prompt. I usually have a very good idea of what I want in my story, so I put it to least. But if I'm feeling more creative or I'm not so sure how the story should continue, I would maybe put it to most or the halfway mark. This is something where you have to learn for yourself which method works the best for you. Next, you have here the number of cards. Cards is what shows up here in this little history column. In this case, these are the cards from our brainstorming session, I think 2 weeks ago. And for write, you can decide if you want just one version generated or up to 6. Here you have to keep in mind that you pay credits for every variation that is generated, even if you do not use the context. Depending on where I am in the writing process, I choose anywhere between 1 or 3 cards usually. Like 1 card if I have a really good idea where I want to go, and 3 and okay, occasionally 6 if I'm not really sure what kind of scene should happen next. Then you can also choose here the length of the cards. And you can choose anywhere between 50 words and 500 words. And as this also informs you, that's the target length. If you will actually get this amount depends on the model, and yeah, mostly it depends on the model, because some get closer to the word count and some produce a little less. It's a little bit of the running joke with AI that it just simply cannot count. It's really bad at, or it used to be bad. Some of the newer models are better at aiming at a certain word count, but in general, you can just get somewhere in this area. And like 250 words are usually roughly 1 page if it's printed in a book. So that's usually what I'm aiming for. Then you have here the prose mode, where you can choose the AI model you want to use for your writing. We'll come back to this in just a moment. And down at the bottom, you have the key details that you can activate or deactivate. And these key details are being used in your auto and guided write mode to give the AI further context or instructions. And you have up to 400 characters space in this box. And here I already have a little bit of key details for the project we'll be working on today. For example, in this case, I said what the setting of the scene should be and how the voice of the narrator should sound. I like to use these key details in a similar way that you would use the extra instructions that you have on the draft box in case you already played around with the draft a bit. But getting back to our prose mode, if you click on prose mode, this is the like little window that will pop up. And you can choose between the prose modes here at the top, which are like your standard prose modes. Muse, which is a model that was created by Sudowrite, especially for storytellers, and is really tuned to writing fiction. Excellent is a prose mode that is based on Claude 3.7 Sonnet. And usually is a little bit more flowery than other models, a bit more wordy, though they have tweaked it recently. So I'm not 100% sure how it's behaving now. I always liked it being wordy, but it definitely gives a high prose quality. That's what you can see here. The quality of the prose you get, how well it is at following instructions, whether it's unfiltered or how unfiltered it is. What's the base model for the prose mode you're using, the credit usage, and whether it writes multilingual. And you also have a little writing sample to get an idea how excellent or Muse or basic will write. And here a little pitch telling you in a short sentence what this model is good at. And I just noticed that it says here standard or premium, but here are no standard and premium. That's maybe something we could know to the developers. But anyway, we have this standard prose modes that you can use. And if you want to be a bit more experimental, you can click here on the advanced models, which gives you a huge selection of different models to choose from. And also gives you access to some of the retired models that used to be up here, like premium, which was mentioned before. And these models that are retired, I'm not using the most up-to-date AI models, but usually still work really well.
We also
But if you
have
start,
3 new models. We also have 3 new models for one,
oh
for
yes,
1 mini and for 1 nano.
oh yes, these here are new. And for some reason, they don't have the little new icon next to them so that they don't jump at you like it does here.
Very cheaper to use too.
Mm. And maybe we could try out a little bit. Let's go with Nano. Nano sounds fun. In general, I often get the question, which of this model is best for writing? And as you may guess, there's a reason that we have a lot of models to select from, since it very much depends on your personal style. So if you're starting out, I'd advise you to just try out like this standard prose modes and see which one works best. And if you're not happy with them, just look if you find something that's closer to your voice within these models. Personally, I love working with excellent or basic because it offers a good balance between structure and creativity. Muse is also really good with
Fiction.
high prose quality for fiction. But since as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm German, I usually write in German. And even though Muse can write German, it's, as you can see here, it's not optimized for multilingual writing, like for example, excellent. So right now, if you're not writing English, I would still say that you should go for basic or excellent, since they're working really well with languages other than English. But in general, if you're writing English, definitely give Muse a shot because it gives really, really good outputs that are not a bit more unique than what you might get from other models. But today we'll try our little Nano. And just put it here, browse mode. Are there any questions about models or anything else I talked about so far before I move on?
The chat is clear.
Everyone's so well behaved.
No, Thomas is doing a very good job answering questions.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. So let us now take a little look at the different write modes that we have here. Auto write is a mode that continues your story logically based on the existing context, which is both the preceding text and whatever it learns from your story Bible and your key details. Guided write, on the other hand, lets you give specific instructions to the AI. In this box, you can fit up to 2,500 characters for most models. For some of the experimental models, only 500 characters fit in there. And with everything you put in there, you can steer the writing in a particular direction. But if you feel like you don't have enough space in there, don't worry. Even if a guided write prompt isn't detailed enough, the AI will simply reference your chapter summary to stay on track. And this also applies to auto write. As long as the chapter summary is linked, it will use the summary as some guidance so that it will not write something that's completely out of the scope of the story you want to tell. Then there's also this third option, which I often call the unloved stepchild, because tone shift, it can be used to adjust the scene's tone, which the name suggests. For example, turning a light-hearted moment into something ominous, or an upbeat scene into something romantic. And while this can be useful, I personally prefer just using guided write for tone changes, as it gives me more control over the final result, and you can just tell it in here that it should write more ominous or whatever tone you would like for your story. So this now finishes our little lecture part, and we can now jump right into our example project and see how write works in action. We will work with the project we've been working on all of April so far, which I like call the Unreal Housewives of the Enchanted Forest. It's, in short, the story of the disgraced Wizard of Oz who launches a magical reality TV show to reclaim his fame, which sparks a rivalry with a sassy young dragon turned influencer whose viral reaction videos threaten to steal the spotlight. Until, of course, the shared secrets and chaotic pasts collide on live enchanted TV. It's a fantastic fantasy comedy story, which is a bit absurd and over the top, and I think quite fun to look at. And we will be working with the first chapter. What's this? First chapter. In the past, it was that you needed at least 50 words before the cursor for the right button to work, but that's been changed. And now you can just start writing in an empty document. However, it's still recommended to have some text before the cursor for better results. But since I personally struggle the most with beginnings and finding the perfect first paragraph, I like to just let Sudowrite do a bit of the magic. And I just hand it the reins and let it surprise me. This is something that works really well with most models. And we'll see how well this would work with our little GPT-4 Nano. For this brainstorming of the beginning, I usually set the creativity to 50% to generate fresher and more unique ideas. And this can sometimes lead the AI to skip parts of the chapter summary and instead focus on something more engaging to hook the reader. And in case that something crucial to the plot gets left out, I just shuffle the summary around a bit so that the key details appear later in the chapter. If you prefer for the AI to stick more closely to your chapter summary, you can go and try lowering the creativity or just use guided try to shape the beginning of your chapter more intentionally. I often indicate for this here in the key details, something like the setting or the POV. Usually a POV character, but since for this story, I want to have an omniscient narrator who has some bit of distance, occasionally breaks the fourth wall, and has a bit of a snarky voice and all that. But that's all stuff you can also put in there. And then I would add something like give me a killer opening that instantly hooks the reader. Oh, that all works. And then I have to go back to Sudowrite, go in here and just click, and I also like to have a few more cards for this. Let's go with 3. We just want a little hook for the beginning, right? And then the card will pop up here. Now let's take a look at our first generated cards here. And the first thing you see up here are the so-called chiclets. They are small tags on the card that show which context elements the AI used to generate the output. In this case, it looked at the character cards for Sarasta P. Dix, Gerd, and Brumi. It looks at the world building card for the Enchanted Forest. It looked at the chapter outline that was linked and Joran's style. And it would And here you have the 3 little cards. First, the Resta predicts sat broodingly in his tree house, which on a good day was a masterpiece of enchanted architecture. Today, more of a chaotic homage to past grandeur. And usually I would take some time to read all the cards and to pick out the best beginning. Let's take, oh,
Which age are you writing for?
Hmm?
What age level are you writing for?
I haven't really thought about the age. I've usually write like all age, like maybe 12 up. But I kind of like the beginning of the first, I have to say. Yeah. Yeah, I think I go for the first one, if no one objects. And I can just go here with insert to shoot it over so that it ends up here. I could also use copy if I wanted to put this somewhere else. As you can see now.
Can I see something right now? This is where the draft is. That's what she's doing right now. She's starting the draft. This is the draft window we're working in right now. That answered the question we had in the chat.
Oh, okay. I was just confused what you were talking about.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So this is our chapter document. And we shot this over here. And as you can see right now, the text is all in purple until you edit something. Then it turns to black, which is a good way to see which parts are actually already been edited by you and which are still exactly as the AI wrote them. Which is really helpful in the editing process. But going back to the little cards, you can here thumbs down or thumbs up the results. If stuff didn't turn out as expected, or if they were really, really good, so that the developers get an idea if there's the issues with some model that they have to take a look at. And if you like something, you can give it a little star. Since I have enlarged my thing, I always have a hard time. My cursor is so big, I have a hard time find the right spot to click this. But usually you can just click it and one of them, and it then would show up in your favorited list. If you're less clumsy than I am. Okay. Are there any questions in the chat that haven't been addressed yet?
No, the chat is going to be addressed at the end of the class if you can show how to work the scenes inside the draft. So she wants to see versus the right button versus the scene, generate some scenes. So after the class, if she's still longer, you can show that.
Okay, yeah, we can do this. Okay. Good,
I have a
back
question.
to, oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what you're showing us here is the result after you wrote it, that you want a killer opening, right?
Yes.
So this is the killer opening. Okay.
Yes. I mean, it Of course, always depends on the genre, what would be considered a killer opening in this. And since this is fantasy comedy and fairy tale parody, that's like a fitting beginning for this genre. Okay, any more questions?
So this is the entire chapter from the AI point of view, or can you make it longer or ask it to extend it, or what's the process?
I'll be getting to this right now. This is just the opening paragraph. This is not the whole chapter, because with Write you have this a bit more interactive and you don't generate a whole chapter in one go, but you go with smaller bite-sized portions of the chapter so that you can always change the direction if the AI does something that you don't like. You have always the chance to guide it into a different direction.
So can you show how you ask it to expand or to continue, or this is what you're doing now, or?
Yeah, this is what I'll be doing next, is to build upon this beginning. Yeah. Since once I have this little beginning, I usually switch over from auto write to guided write with zero creativity, as I want the AI to follow my instructions as closely as possible. And then I usually go back to one card. And depending on how long I want the output to be, I either go for 450 words or 500 words. Since, as I mentioned before, some models, even if you say you want 500 words, they only give you 300. So you have to see, depending on model, because I like to have, like, in the end, like 250 words. But for some, you have to give it a bit more leeway to get close to that. But Nano seems to work really well with the word count, since you can see here that it was 97 words. So it's quite close to what we were asking. So I guess it will also work well with my 250 words. And I would take this here out, since we already have the opening. And Nana, you raised your hand.
Yeah, Jim is having a question for you. Is there an advantage to put the killer opening instruction in the write setting and then use write, as opposed to just putting the killer opening instruction into the guided write instruction box?
It should both work. It depends. In my experience, I feel that auto write is a bit more creative and takes more freedom, especially when you use it like this. But if you have any other ideas of how the opening should look like, you can just also go and put this in here and say, give me a killer opening, and then this is the scene that I wanted to write. I hope that answered the question. But both would generally work. But I like to have a bit more freedom at the beginning. Okay. Any more questions? Before I move on?
Good.
Okay. So here we have a little document that you will also get with first what I had as extra instructors and the key details. and what I will use at the guided write prompts. I usually structure my prompts in a way that I start with something like the POV, end up with some further instructions, all depending on how much I already put in here. Since the key details only have 400 characters, and sometimes not everything I want to have as an instruction will fit in there. So sometimes I would also add instructions in my guided write prompts. Like you could give it something to focus on in this beat and this prompt, or to give it some extra context that's only relevant for one of the prompts. Since I prefer to have these instructions to be working for the whole chapter, but this is only for the card I'd be generating at the moment. I hope that makes sense. It sounds a bit wrangles in my head, but I hope it was understandable. And as the basis for these prompts, I use the scenes that were generated last month, 2 weeks ago in this session. I just copied them and edited them a little bit. Since in my experience, it works well if you give it like guidances like show Sarasta doing something. And I just noticed there's a T missing. And like that. By just telling what's supposed to happen in the scene, you can guide the AI closely to your vision. You also have some flexibility. Okay. So let's head over to our chapter. I hope then you can just go to guided write and copy your prompt in there. If you hit go, it will just create a card similar to before, but it will take into account what already happened in here. Notice. Sarastas fingers hovered over his chant remote as if it were a fragile relic. Probably because it was, given how often he accidentally turned himself into a frog or conjured endless glitter storms. Yada, yada, yada. I must say, it's not bad, but I think excellent gives a little bit of a better voice compared to what this was Nano, right? It's giving us. But on the other hand, it's really cheap. So you could just use this as the basic to work with it. And in general, I would just go and like insert this, then take some time to edit it the way I like it, which we sadly don't have the time to do right now. And then I would look where we are in the chapter, and then would take the next, where is it? Little prompt and carry on like this. Okay, Mana, you have a question?
You have 12 minutes before the hour.
Okay, thanks. Then we'll just generate another card, and then I think it's time for the Q&A.
I think you need to close this sentence with another comma. What the AI wrote start with a comma and doesn't. It's a dialogue or something. It looks like, but it didn't close it with comma.
Yeah, it didn't finish the sentence, and I was just looking if it would pick up on this, because this is something that depends a bit on model. Some models.
So we're working with 4.1 mini, or is that the one?
Yeah, with I think it's Nano.
Nano.
And
Yeah,
some models are quite good at
finishing
picking up what happened before and then finish the sentence. But this one doesn't seem to do this. It's at least it doesn't look like it does. No. It more looks as if it just ignores what's here. And looks at the last finished chapter and just gives us something new to add to this. At least the way I read it, that would make more sense as a direct report to your last spell turned your bird into #HiveMind. That's also something you have to figure out with the different models, how exactly they behave and how they have to be prompted to get the results you want. That was learned. Okay. So, but this is like a small peek into how I use Write in my process. And aside from what I just told you, there are a few things that you can keep in mind when you write your prompts. For one, some AI models struggle with negative commands like don't use passive voice. So instead you should say it in a more positive way, like use active voice or something like shun passive voice. So since sometimes it's like I'm sure you know this about do not think of a pink elephant thing, that once you hear this, all you can do is think of a pink elephant. And AI often works the same way, that it just skips over the don't, or at least some of the older models used to do this. So that's something to keep an eye out. And also, if you use your prompts, it's helpful to make sure that you avoid any pronouns that are not, like in this case, show Zoroaster sitting in his cluttered enchanted treehouse. It's obvious that this his is Zoroaster, but at later points, it may help to repeat his name instead of a him or he, so that it's clear to the AI who is meant with this pronoun. And I'm not using pronoun. Okay. I think that's the most important stuff. Some other general advice. If you want to figure out how the voice of an AI model sounds and how it naturally develops a story without detailed guidance, it's like a good way to run Auto-write without the story Bible turned on, just to get an idea how, for example, Nano would start a story if you just had it start story. This is a good way to see like the natural voice of the AI. Another thing to keep in mind is that AI models evolve over time, so that a prompt that works today may not work the same after an update. Or like, I noticed today that the same prompts that work really well with Excellent may not work that well with another model. So that's also something to keep in mind. And lastly, sometimes it's quicker to tweak the text manually rather than spending a lot of time perfecting a prompt. So don't forget that in the end, you are the author. And not everything has to be written by an AI in your story. Okay, so this is like the end of the scripted part. Now, are there any questions in the chat? Hey, Thomas.
Okay, I think this can be a combo question. So the same person who wanted to see you show scenes versus write wants to know, can you use your outline for each chapter in conjunction with write for each chapter? And I think you've already shown that, so you just have to kind of point it out.
If I'm getting the question right, yes. Let's go back to the chapter. As you can see here, it always is looking at the outline chapter that is linked. Oh, now it's jumped down here. Like in this case, it's chapter 1. And it's all depending on what chapter you have linked up here above.
I think that's what she meant. I mean, that's what I thought she meant, what you just showed.
Yeah. I hope. If it's not what was meant, just drop another question so that I can get back to it.
Okay, yeah, she says that's what she meant.
Awesome. And that's also, it's really helpful that it looks at the outline, since you have virtually almost unlimited space in here to put information in here for the AI to consider. I think the limit is something like 50,000 words. But I wouldn't put 50,000 words in there because it's still possible to overwhelm an AI by giving it too much information. But you don't have to just have like 3 lines. You can make it more detailed to guide your generations better. Any other question?
I
You
don't
want to show them something?
see any, but I'm looking.
Go ahead, Thomas.
No, I was just saying I don't see any unanswered chat questions at this point.
So
Okay.
Dahlia, can you show how to get the chat box open so they can actually chat with the chat and ask their little prompt? Because one of the things is asking is how do you make a prompt? How do you do your prompt?
Yes. In this case, I'm not sure if it may be that yes, I think I deleted the chapter where I had the scenes already generated. But in this case, I had just generated scenes and used this as basis to make my guided write prompt. In the past, when we still had beats, I like to use beats for this, which in my opinion was better as a guided write prompt than using scenes. So there are also plugins that you could use for this. Probably. There should be some that generate beats for you. I'm not 100% sure since I always read my own stuff from my writing in German. So I'm not sure, but there should be like in the plugins thing, if you would search here, you would likely find some good plugins that create beats or instructions based on your chapter summary. You could also, now this sometimes doesn't work. You could also use, I mean, I haven't tried this yet, but it should work that you open Quick Chat with Command K and just ask it to help me write. I wonder if that works. Theoretically, it should be able to see the second chapter. Does it work? Feel free. Ah. Yeah, this also seems to work really well. Just to ask Quick Chat for some guided write instructions. Nice. That way I also learned something new today. Okay. Any further questions?
I wanted to ask if you write or allow the AI to write text directly in the chapter and then you create scenes, what is the final outcome? How would they different one from the other?
could you be more precisely what you mean with then create scenes?
The final
Then-
outcome is actually the text, the book, the text in the book, right?
Mhm. Yes, that's
So, like, I'm a little bit confused because for me, chapter is only the header, and then everything you write inside is a scene. But you show that you can actually write directly under a chapter, and you can create also scenes. So would they be separated, or would it come as a one flowing text? What would be the result?
well, as I see it, generally a chapter is consists of one or more scenes. So what I'm writing here is like the
Exactly,
first scene. Yeah.
but you wrote under the chapter without dividing to scenes. So I'm confused about it.
I'm just like while I'm working on this chapter.
I think I can answer part of this.
Oh yes.
So when you're working with scenes, maybe this isn't the answer, but when you're working with scenes, let's just say it gives you 4 or 5 scenes and you hit generate, it gives you one continuous, like continuity wise, one continuous sequence or chapter, you know, and it's only broken up with these little identifiers right now that say like scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. So you can know how it's broken down, but you can take those out. So it's like one continuous run, which is basically what she's doing. She's saying there's just another way to do this with write, where if you're the kind of author that likes to generate and work with it like she does, and John and a bunch of other people do, like this is a little bit preferred method over the scenes method. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. But on still, what would happen? What would be the outcome if I write both under the write and both under the scene? Like, how would the final book would look? Would it separate it? Would it just write everything that I wrote under the write, under the chapter first, and then the scenes? What would be the outcome?
Oh. Thomas, you raised the hand. Maybe you know how to put this in. It's because
Yeah, I
in
mean,
general,
okay, go ahead.
oh, it's the output would let. Go ahead, Thomas. I think I have to wrap my head a
I mean,
little bit more around it to put it into the right
I'm not
amount of
entirely
words.
sure, but my first answer is the output would be a mess. You have to edit it. It's not an editor.
Yeah.
You can't just push a button and get a book out of it. So if you're,
Yeah.
let's say you do scenes and in the middle of scene 2 and 3, you're like, oh, I want to expand on this. So I hit write or auto write. It isn't gonna, you're gonna have to edit some of that because what comes after it isn't being read, right? So it'll read what came before it, fine. So it'll continue that'll be, and then all of a sudden it'll be like maybe this kind of weird non-continuous thing where you need to put in a transitional scene or just do some editing, but you can't just go in and press button, and then hit send and have a book. That would be a mess. It has to be edited.
But still, okay, so let's say I write the things inside the chapter, and then I write the things in a scene. Then I guess I haven't seen, but I guess finally I have to generate a book, right? So I get all the text in a one flow. So what would come first? Would the text of the chapter come first and then the scenes? Would the scenes come first and then the chapter? What's the how the system works? Like technically, not. I understand what you're saying about the flow of the book, but I'm just asking, like, technically, like if you generate a book from it, like maybe
Like
we should. Yeah, sorry.
do you mean like if this would be turned into a physical book, or since
Want me to
in
answer that
general,
for you? You want me to answer?
if you
If
like to?
I understand well what he's asking, the fact is today we were working just on the writing button. What he's asking basically is trying to make head and tails on how to use Sudowrite to write a book. The scene is basically exactly what it says. It's scenes per chapter. So your scene comes first because you want to write your book. So, but you don't want to write your own book. So your scene start first, then your chapter second, and so on. So once you have your scene, which is basically part of your chapter, so scene one is the entrance of Joe Blow coming inside the room, meeting Mary, blah, blah, blah. Scene two, someone else shows up and discord happen and the whole chaos arrive. And scene three, the hero shows up and fix everything. And scene four, everything is finishing perfectly and they live very happy forever, da, 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 da. These scenes are used to write your chapter. This is why we have the scene on top. Can you show the scene for me, please, Dahlia?
Yes.
That little typing
This one.
machine there. These are the scene. You can write your own scene or you can generate your own scene with the button inside that box. From there, you also have the extra instruction in purple that you can see right under the scene. That's where you can tell what you want the AI to write in which style, which POV, which tense, and everything you want in those scenes to develop inside your chapter. Then you choose your, under the generate, the muse with the little star, you choose your model. Once you get your model, you click on your model, it's going to tell you right under the instruction, something will show up when you click on that. The AI is going to tell you, looks, everything looks great. I'm ready to write. You're going to have 12,000 words in that chapter. Then you say, okay, let's do it. You click again on generate and it's going to generate your chapter. These are the steps on how to write your chapter for your book. Does that make sense?
Maybe I have maybe I don't understand. Maybe I have one assumption which is not true. The final step is, can I export the text into a PDF or Word document or something and get it as a book?
Yes.
Okay. So when I do that, the order, if I understand you, the order will be first the scenes and then the text from the chapter?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a long process. It looked like so simple when it's simple in a way and not in the other way. But it's like, it takes a while for the AI to generate a full chapter. And then once you read your chapter, you can use all your laser tool to fix your chapter. Where a cursor is right now, this is the chapter. And inside that, you go and correct your chapter. You fix it the way you want. Once it's there, you select all, you can import, you can export, you can put it wherever you want to get your book published. But first, you got to read everything inside of this, fixing it, because not everything coming out of this is ready for publishing.
Yeah, that I surely understand. The question was, well, simply like, if when I export it, so what you're saying, like, or first, let's say, when I export both the text from the chapter and both the text from the scenes
You don't need the scene. You don't need the scene.
No, you don't need this, yeah. You would only export
no, so I have to
this file.
choose
No.
what I export.
No. The scene are only explanation on how the book is written, on how to write that chapter. You don't need the scene to be imported or exported for your book. You only need the chapter for your book. Yeah, I try to understand. Maybe I don't understand this question properly.
Okay,
yeah, I'm also
so
a bit unsure.
I understand you. the same way as we had a card, when we create a scene, we have to insert it into the chapter, the text itself?
No, the scene already, and they're going to be written one by one into your chapter. You don't need to do twice.
Let me ask this way. We have a chapter now with the text. Can we generate one scene and then export it into a book and see what's the order, what comes first? Regardless what the content is and if it makes sense, just to see the order of the text.
It's going from scene 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, unless you tell the AI that you want to start with scene 3, 2, 1. I think I'm getting, it's so much more like in a much deeper classes when we work with scenes. Thomas, can you get a class for scenes? I think Nicole had a few on that, or I know I work a lot with.
I put one in there, but somebody said that maybe not all of them, but somebody said that they're not in Discord. And I don't know, do you know if I don't know if Harper and Stacy have their own channel as far as YouTube goes.
Okay. Because I personally works like John, I have a lot of information in my scene and my extract, so that I can create a whole book in this window. I can create 30,000 words book right there in this window.
Yeah,
So
I think something that might be confusing is that the scenes here in this box are like scene directions. They're not the actual scenes that are written and show up in the book. Like,
yeah, I think KIC got it. So the top box, the draft box here on top that we see, this is the AI information to write the chapter.
Yeah.
Below it is the chapter. So you just need the below result to work on. I hope that makes sense.
I think that's, the wording I think is a bit confusing since we use like this essential scene directions to generate scenes that then show up down here in the chapter.
Okay, but they show with a lot more development. Yeah. Something Thomas showed up here. This is a very deep, go deep. Ambassador Stacy, yeah. Deep dive.
There are also, yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, Thomas put a very good link right now inside the chat to go see the video, which was done by Stacy and Harper. Hopefully the video will answer your question. We don't insert the scene inside the chapter, Karis. The scenes are basically for the AI to create the chapter. And it's going to create one scene at a time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, so it will create cards the same way as we saw before, and then I have to insert the cards into the chapter.
That's the way that Dahlia, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so any more questions about using the right button? We are already a bit over the hour.
Mm-hmm.
So seems like there are no questions. Then let's head over to the final slide of my presentation, which essentially is a big thank you. First to my lovely co-hosts, Tomas and Manon, for their amazing support today. I couldn't have done this without you. And of course, also a big thank you for your curiosity and engagement and the questions that you have. And if you have a moment, please leave a rating and review to help us know what's working, what we can improve in this class so that we can make it even better. And now I just wish all of you happy writing, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.